All right, yeah, let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Will Smith. I am a senior consultant with Intellias. I'll be leading this webinar today. I'll tell you all a little bit more about myself and Intellias here in a moment. But for today, we're going to be focusing on the transition management module within Infor. We'll be talking about sort of going beyond onboarding, so getting the most out of this module, some creative applications that we've seen some of our clients use, and we'll be focusing in kind of on some of the basic building blocks of transition management, what this module means, and hopefully spark some ideas for you all about how you might be able to use it. Either starting from scratch and setting up the transition management module, or maybe getting more out of it or creating some new applications within transition management that may help you and your team. Our agenda for today, we will go ahead and start with introductions. I'll tell you a little bit again about myself and Intellias. Then we'll take a look at what is transition management. So what does this module mean when we talk about transition management? What are we saying? Then we'll talk about why transition management. So what are some of the benefits of this? Why is this a powerful tool? Why might you be interested in using it? Then we'll get into the meat of the presentation, which will be the transition management tools, where we'll talk about some of the building blocks or components, the people and the systems and the processes that make up transition management. And then we'll talk a little bit at the end about implementation examples. So some of the ways we've helped our clients use transition management, some of the creative applications that we've seen within this module recently. And then at the end, we'll have a live demo where we'll briefly get into the system and take a look at transition management from both an administrator point of view as well as a resource point of view to look at a transition program in the system and see what that actually looks like. So before we get into it, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. Again, I'm Will Smith. I'm a senior consultant with Intellias. I started out as a technical consultant a long time ago and worked with tools that some of you all may be familiar with, things like Infor process automation, file creation, utility, configuration console, helping design and implement extensions and processes and things like that on the technical side. And then for a little over 5 years now, I've been a functional consultant, so the bulk of my day-to-day these days is working with clients to help them implement new modules within Infor, whether that's setting up a module for the first time as a standalone or as part of a larger implementation, or maybe even creating a new transition program in a module they already have set up, right, or a new hiring workflow or something like that. I've helped with implementations with many different clients in many industries. And I specialize in talent acquisition, transition management, and learning and development. Today we'll be focused on transition management specifically, but I think I will be giving another webinar later this spring on talent acquisition. We'll talk a little bit today about how those two kind of intertwine and how you can use talent acquisition to leverage transition management and vice versa. So if you have interest in learning more about talent acquisition, keep an eye on our news page, on our LinkedIn page for more updates about that upcoming webinar. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. Now I'll tell you guys a little bit about us here at Intellias. We are a software and services company. We were established back in 1999 as a software company, but have been in the services space since 2016. We are an Infor Alliance partner, so have worked closely with Infor for many, many years. We have a wide variety of Infor and AWS certified consultants, so people with expertise in many different areas. We help with cloud migrations and upgrades, system assessments, new module implementations, like I talked about on the previous slide. We have technical consultants and functional consultants to help with application support. We can help with system administration. We have expertise in HR Talent and FSM. And we also have a variety of software offerings for Lawson and Infor HR Talent, including payroll automation and expense management. So really, if you have any sort of question or need in the Infor or Lawson space, there's definitely someone on the Intellias team who has seen it before, done it before, is very familiar with what you're going through. So we are always willing to take a look and help out. I'll provide a little bit of contact information at the end of this presentation, but always feel free to reach out to us with any questions you might have about this webinar, or again, about anything else really in the Infor or Lawson space. Okay. Let's get into kind of the meat of the presentation for today. So we're going to start with what is transition management. So this is a module within HR Talent. If you are using HR Talent, if you have Cloud Suite deployed, if you're logging in with Employee Space, Manager Space, you're part of the way there to using transition management already. Employee Space and Manager Space, as we'll see later on, are heavily integrated with this module. But it's something that's delivered with HR Talent. If you have that, then you already have the license to use transition management, whether you're using it today or not. It was introduced back in GHR and Talent Management version 11.0.1. So it's about 6 or 7 years old now. It's been around for a while, and throughout that time, we've seen a number of clients implement it and get a lot of use out of it. They're also still continuing to release updates to this day. Just added new types of tasks recently, so it's something that's still very much in support, very much getting new features released, but has also been around for a number of years, and there are quite a few clients live and using this to great effect today. So at its core, what is this? What are we talking about? So really, this is a module that lets us help transition people, candidates, and resources, and we'll define those later on, but really people throughout their employment lifecycle within our organization. So basically moving people through events like hire, rehire, transfer. You can imagine when someone gets hired into your organization, right? There are likely a set of tasks that they need to complete before they're able to start on their first day. They probably need to fill out an I-9, a W-4. Maybe they need to have a background check. Maybe they need to read an employee handbook. So it's really a way for us to help distribute that type of information or that type of task electronically, automatically to the people, to the candidates and resources who need to complete. And again, really just a systematic approach to tracking and completing tasks. So a way for us to kind of group tasks together, to distribute those automatically to different groups of people, and then to track the completion of them as our candidates and resources are working through these tasks in preparation to start at our organization or transition into a new position or whatever it may be. So this is a look at some of the common types of transition management programs that we'll see, just as an example, to help us get in the headspace of, what are we talking about here again. So the 4 kind of most common transition programs that we'll see that almost every organization has some version of are pre-boarding, onboarding, cross-boarding, and off-boarding. Pre-boarding being I haven't started yet at the organization. I don't yet have an employee email. I don't yet have an employee ID. I'm not logging into employee self-service yet. But I still need to maybe read some information, sign some papers, have some tasks that I need to complete before I'm even hired, right? Before we even create an employee ID for me. So these, again, are tasks or programs that I, as a candidate, am completing before day 1, before my start date. Onboarding, on the other hand, happens after the start date, after the hire action. These are activities used to basically get new hires into our organization, get them all set up and ready to start and ready to hit the ground running. So these are things that after I'm logging in as an employee, after my start date, but very early on in my time with the organization, I need to complete. Those are the types of tasks that would fall into an onboarding program. Crossboarding, similar to onboarding, but this will be for transitions between different positions. So maybe a promotion or a transfer or something like that. We can imagine, maybe if we have a teacher who's moving into an administrative position, or a nurse who's moving into a scheduling position, something like that. Maybe we need certain training or tasks or waivers that need to be completed by that person before they're able to start in their new position. Those types of things would fall into crossboarding. And then we have onboarding, which helps us to collect organization assets, deprovision users, and just generally aid in separation when someone is ready to leave the organization. All right, next we'll take a look at where transition management falls within Infor, within the Infor landscape. So we can see we've got kind of core HR and payroll over here, talent management over here, employee and manager space spanning across both. And we can see transition management kind of falls in both areas. The onboarding and crossboarding and offboarding that we just talked about falls over here under core HR and payroll, because these are tasks or programs that we're using for our active employees or resources. So falling under this bucket because it's people who are part of our active organization, as opposed to pre-boarding falls over here with talent acquisition on the talent management side of things, because again, these are tasks that people are completing externally, right? Before they are actually hired as an employee, they're getting into this web application and completing tasks as part of pre-boarding. All right, so now that we've outlined what transition management is, let's talk about why it is powerful, why it's an important tool, and why you might be interested in using it. So one thing that I think is a huge benefit for transition management for this system is that it can enable us to get participation from all these different groups. We can send tasks to resources, to employees, and to candidates. So like we talked about, right, we've got internal employees and candidates, and we can distribute tasks to both. But in addition to that, we can also include managers and recruiters and administrative personnel. Those people can not only monitor programs and see the progress that candidates and resources are making, but we can also distribute tasks to them if needed. So maybe when someone starts at our organization, they need to go pick up a laptop from IT, and we could have maybe an administrative task that goes to IT that says, hey, so-and-so has just started and they need a laptop. Or maybe we have fingerprinting that needs to happen, or other things that the candidate or the resource is not doing themselves, but that someone needs to do on their behalf within the organization. Transition management lets us sort of automatically distribute tasks to those people and get participation from all these different groups, and then can help us amalgamate that all into kind of one program or one easy to find group of tasks that then these managers and recruiters and administrators can go monitor. In addition to that, we also get seamless integration with talent acquisition and HR talent. So talent acquisition plugs in very nicely with pre-boarding. You're able to, if you're using the configurable hiring workflow, you're able to trigger pre-boarding automatically when you get to a certain point within your workflow, which is very, very powerful. And it just integrates seamlessly into HR talent. Again, employee and manager space are used to distribute these tasks and to follow up on them. And so that sort of UI and employee space or manager space that your employees are comfortable with and used to already is just used seamlessly for transition management. They don't have to learn a new system or anything like that. It's all just part of their regular HR talent login. It can also reduce the physical paper trail enormously. So if you're an organization that's using physical documents for things like tax forms today, or maybe you have a packet that your employees need to fill out, signatures that you're getting physically, acknowledgements that need to be signed, physical employee handbooks, things like that. This can reduce paper trail enormously by digitalizing all of that. So we can have digital attachments, we can have electronic forms to collect or distribute information, electronic signatures, and we have customizable acknowledgement and signature boxes that let us put whatever text we might need in front of our employees to, again, help us just massively reduce that paper trail and that need for physical or paper documents. And again, kind of amalgamates that all into one place as opposed to having to keep, a physical employee file or something like that. And then finally, and I think this is probably my favorite part, or what I think is one of the most powerful features of transition management, is that we can use it to create a unique experience for each different type of employee group. So if you're an organization that has many different types of employees, for example, maybe you're a school district and you have, teachers versus janitors versus administrators, volunteers, coaches, or maybe a hospital system has, nurses and doctors and administrators, right? Those different groups of people are going to need very, very different sets of tasks, of information, of steps that they need to complete before they can start work. And within transition management, we're able to set up rules and task groups to sort of automatically help us control this and automatically distribute the right sets of tasks to the right people so that everyone who's starting with our organization gets a unique experience that's kind of tailored for them and the information they need to see before they start in their new role. So next, we'll take a look at the transition management tools, kind of the building blocks or the components that make up the module. We'll talk a little bit about the people who are involved, as well as some of the, Infor language, right, or some of the business classes and components that we have access to, the tools we have access to within transition management that we kind of put all together to create a transition program. So we'll start by talking about the players or the people who are involved. I've touched a little bit on this already, but again, we've got our candidates, right? These are external applicants, people who are not yet members of our organization. These are people who do not have an employee ID, do not have an employee login. They are still applying, right, or have maybe accepted an offer, but they are using an external web application to complete tasks. So these would be the people who, if we think back to our definition earlier, are completing pre-boarding before we take the hire action to go ahead and create an employee record for them. And again, we have an external web application that anyone can create an account for. It's very quick and easy. It's free. And so the idea is anyone who has applied via talent acquisition already has an account, and they can use that same external account to go ahead and complete transition management, complete pre-boarding. Then we've got our resources. So these are, again, our people within the organization, our employees, right? These are people who are logging in with a organization email. They are using employee space, and their tasks, their onboarding or crossboarding are integrated right into employee space. So we'll see that a little bit later on in the live demo, but they log in and they can go right to any transition programs that they have assigned and complete those from within their employee self-service portal. Then we have administrators. So these are people maybe like recruiters or hiring representatives or IT, maybe a fingerprinting team. This is anyone who is assigned to complete a task on behalf of a resource or a candidate who is not that person themselves. So again, some of the things that need to happen within our organization to make sure someone has a smooth start that the person is not doing themselves, right? Maybe, hey, we need to create a name tag for Will before he starts. That could be an administrative task that's assigned to a manager, for example. And then lastly, we have the managers. These are people who are able to view and manage programs and tasks within transition management for their direct reports or for the people who will be starting under them soon. So these are people who basically have insight into the dashboard and can track progress of employees and candidates as they move through their transition programs. Next, we've got the process. So again, kind of a quick look at the employee lifecycle in its entirety. Pre-boarding, so starting as a candidate, accepting the offer. Another quick mention that if you are using talent acquisition and using the configurable hiring workflow today, you can use that to automatically trigger pre-boarding programs. And pre-boarding sort of ends at hire. Once you're hired, you stop being a candidate, you become a resource, and then you move on to onboarding. So onboarding is, again, a program that's initiated by the hire or the rehire. You've started with us, and you need to complete some more tasks, early on in your tenure with the organization. Crossboarding are employees or resources who are moving back and forth within the organization. Maybe they've had a add work assignment, a new work assignment added to them. Maybe they've been promoted to a new position or transferred to a new position or department, and they've been given a cross-boarding program to get them ready for that new role. And then again, offboarding, this is initiated by the terminate action, and again is for resources. All right, now getting into the building blocks or kind of the components within Infor, some of the Infor definitions and language that make up the module. So kind of at the highest level, and you've heard me mention these a few times already, we've got transition programs. A transition program is a group of tasks. So when we talk about onboarding or pre-boarding or cross-boarding, those are often synonymous with transition program. So onboarding would be an example of a transition program. That's sort of the shell, right, or the outer group of tasks. And then a transition program is made up of transition tasks, which are our next building block. So these tasks are the individual things that need to be completed and who needs to complete them. And then those are added to a transition program to make up the program. We'll take a look at this in more detail later on. But again, the idea is, maybe we've got an onboarding program and that's made up of 3 tasks, let's say a welcome message, direct deposit task, and a W-4 task. Those might be our 3 tasks. Those 3 things together in a group make up the transition program of onboarding. Our third building block we've got here is a transition form. So these can be either delivered by Infor or custom. Infor delivers quite a number of really nice transition forms, things like personal information, EEO identification, emergency contact, things like that, right? So maybe basic information that we need to collect from an employee or provide to an employee before they get started with us would be a transition form. Before we move on to additional building blocks, let's talk a little bit more about the tasks and forms themselves. Transition tasks, again, are really kind of the meat of this module, or the thing that makes up the majority of the module, especially when you are in the design phase and thinking about what do I need to build to give to my employees within transition management. Transition tasks, I think, are really where to start. Because these are, again, the building blocks that you'll put together to make up your programs. And when we're creating a transition task, we want to think about these 5 things. So the first thing with the task to think about is who's the audience for this task? So who needs to complete this? Is it something that a candidate or a resource is going to complete for themselves? Is it something, maybe they need to read or they need to sign, a form they need to fill in? Or is it an administrative task like we talked about, right? Is it, hey, we need to have a laptop ready for this person to pick up, or we need to create a name tag before this person starts, or something like that? Is it a task that a manager or that IT or someone else within the organization is doing on behalf of the candidate before they begin work? So that's step one, is who is our audience? The next thing we'll look at is what is the type of form? And we'll dig into this a little bit more in the system as well. But Infor lets us choose between a variety of different task types. We can choose a form type task, an instructions type task, content, PDF, URL, tax forms and I-9, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, or an L&D activity. So that's almost an overwhelming number of choices. But really what that means is, you could select a form. So any of the variety of delivered Infor forms, like we talked about the personal information form, or something like that, something that the employee needs to fill in. It could also be instructions, which is just kind of a shorter task. It gives you like a rich text box that you can include any content you would like. You could also include an acknowledgement and signature with instructions. Content is similar, but it's a larger, rich text box that gives you the option to add images, embed videos, and things like that. There's also a PDF type task, which lets you just basically directly upload a PDF into the system. So if you've got something like an employee handbook or something like that that you need employees to review and acknowledge, the PDF type task, and you've got it already, maybe locally saved as a PDF or a Word document or something like that. The PDF type task can be very, very handy for that use case. We can also embed URLs, which will take us directly to a web page and have that be sort of windowed within the transition management task. And then we've got our integration partners with tax forms and I-9, which we'll talk about later on. And then you can also integrate learning and development activities as well. So if you're using that module and you have maybe a, intro to our organization L&D activity or something like that you need people to do, or maybe a training that they need to start before they start in their new position, you could do an L&D activity type task as well. The third thing you need to think about when creating a task are the prerequisites of the task. So are there any other tasks that they need to have completed before they complete this one? So oftentimes we'll see, for the tax forms task, you may have a prerequisite of the personal information task. So maybe we'll enforce you need to complete personal information before you can start on the tax forms task. But those prerequisites are completely customizable. You can set up that sort of dependency or prerequisite tree in whatever way you choose. We also need to think about, is there an acknowledgement and or signature as part of this task? So that's an option with every task we create. If we want to enforce a signature on that task, we can do so. And that will be an electronic signature that we'll take a look at in a little bit here. And then the last thing we need to think about with task creation are our calculation methods and emails. So calculation methods are the ability for us to calculate time, basically, or days. We'll look at those in more detail a little bit later on, but the idea would be maybe we want to assign a due date for this task as we're setting it up, and we have a calculation method that says, give us the date 60 days after the employee's start date. And then we could say, hey, your welcome to our organization task is due 60 days after your start date. And then it will be, it'll trigger like a due date reminder as we get close to that date, and we can set up email reminders and automations to help our employee remember that this task is due using that calculation method. So those 5 components, and I know there's kind of a lot there, but again, that's really the meat of transition management, is defining these tasks using these 5 components, and then taking those tasks that we create and putting those together into a sequence or into a transition program. Next, we'll look a little bit at transition forms. So we talked on the previous slide about how one type of task is a form type task. This basically means that we can select form when we set up the task, and then we will be able to choose from any of the transition forms in the system, either the ones that we've created or the ones that Infor has delivered. So we can see here a nice list of many of the forms that Infor delivers. There's actually a few more than this that are delivered, but right out of the box, they have some very nice forms to collect things like veteran self-ID, personal information, emergency contact, EEO, disability, direct deposit. So they deliver this kind of suite of transition forms that you can use right out of the box. And then you also have the ability within Configuration Console, if you need to make custom forms to collect, maybe you have something specific to your organization or to your state or something like that, that you need to collect via a custom form. You can create those via Configuration Console and add those into transition programs as well. And then this is just an example of what one of these forms may look like within a transition program. So this is kind of from the employee view. I'm logged in, I'm doing onboarding, and I'm seeing the personal information form. So it's basically asking me to, confirm my name, probably a name that I entered during talent acquisition, during my application. We can collect additional information like birth date and marital status and address. Sorry. And all of that is kind of like free-form text fields within the form, within onboarding, that the employee will fill in. Once they complete this, the task will show as completed to the administrators, and the employee will be able to print out this form, or they can always go back and reopen this and continue making updates up until the point that the program is submitted. Okay, now that we've taken a kind of deeper dive into tasks and forms, let's jump back a little bit and talk about a couple more of the building blocks that we have available to us, or the tools. So another type of information distribution is the transition content. This is basically a business class within Infor that gives us a massive rich text field. It lets us put large blocks of text or instructions. It lets us embed images and videos. It's kind of a way, if we have a lot of content, but we don't have it maybe in a PDF to upload to a PDF task, we just have, hey, we need to distribute this page of information to our employees and have them review it and sign it. We could use transition content for something like that. Eligibility groups are very, very powerful. These are one of the key things that lets us do some of the customization for different groups that we talked about earlier. So we can set up eligibility groups, and some of you may be familiar with these. They're also called business class groups. They're used in a variety of modules within Infor. But these basically let us use LPL syntax to create eligibility, and then we can link these to our transition programs as a whole or our individual transition tasks. So for example, maybe we have an onboarding program and we have 30 tasks in that program. Let's say 15 of those tasks only apply to nurses. We could create an eligibility group and look at some criteria in the system. Maybe, hey, your position is one of these job codes, or something like that, to determine who are our nurses. And then we could link that eligibility group back to our tasks so that when our onboard program is created and distributed, maybe if I'm hired as an administrator, I only get 15 tasks, but then I'm hired as a nurse and the eligibility group looks at my position and realizes, hey, he's eligible for these other 15 tasks that are specific to nursing, and it will assign me those tasks. So eligibility groups are this really, really powerful tool that we can use to basically customize who is getting which programs, who is getting which tasks, and really allow us to get very granular and very specific about what programs we give to who, what information we give to who. But they enable us to do that automatically, right? We create these criteria, we create this eligibility, we set this all up, and then every time someone is hired or every time someone is transferred, all of this eligibility that we've created fires for us, and we don't have to worry manually. Someone in HR doesn't have to go through and sort through and say, hey, this person just started and they need these 15, and this person just started and they need these 30. Once we set this up and run it, it will just start working and automatically sort eligibility for us based off of the criteria that we define. And we won't need to, manually worry about who's getting which tasks any longer. And then finally here, we've got our application start pages. So both within the internal employee space, but probably more relevant in the external employee space, we have the ability to kind of customize the application start page to provide information to our candidates. So if we want to, brand that page, embed a YouTube video, provide some instructions about how to navigate through the pre-boarding or the transition management tasks, those are the types of things we can put on the application start page. So, maybe I get an email and it says, hey, welcome to our organization. Please complete your onboarding. I follow that link and it takes me to the application start page. And then that page has whatever we want to put there to kind of direct me onward to go ahead and complete my transition program. All right, and then our final group of components here, we've got our email templates. So we've got the ability to completely customize email templates, include variables for things like, email addresses, maybe employer candidate name, manager name, position, lots of the basic information within HR Talent we have available to us within these email templates that we can, again, trigger automatically as these tasks or programs are assigned or completed. So basically, thinking about distributing what information outside of the system, right, in email and to who. We can send these emails to managers, to administrators, to employees, to candidates. All of those things are possible and can be sort of linked to tasks so that when they're assigned or completed or overdue, we can customize the emails that are going out to our candidates and resources. We also have task groups. So these are groups we can create within HR Talent, which will define who completes the administrative tasks. So I mentioned fingerprinting as an example of an administrative task. Maybe we have a fingerprinting task group that we can add employees to. And then anytime a administrative fingerprinting task is assigned as part of pre-boarding, anyone in that task group will be able to view it and respond to it. So that's basically how we control who the administrators are and who is able to complete the administrative tasks and see the progress of those. And then finally, our date calculation methods. So these are a way for us to calculate based off of things like start date, maybe adjusted start date, maybe program due date. But these are ways for us to calculate off of these input methods when are emails sent and when are tasks due. So maybe we want all tasks to be due 60 days after start date or 7 days after start date. Maybe we want a reminder email to be sent the day before the start date. We could set up date calculation methods to calculate those time intervals for us, and then we can use those date calculation methods to create the due dates of tasks as well as to fire emails automatically. Okay, we'll take a quick look at some screenshots from the system. So this is an overview of the dashboard. So this is something that an administrator might see when reviewing a candidate's transition tasks. They've got this dashboard here where they could see all the different transition programs that they have visibility into. They've got this overview panel here where they can kind of see, hey, here are all the pending programs within pre-boarding. Right now there are none. Here are all the in progress programs within pre-boarding. So we can see this candidate has started his program but has not yet finished it. And then we can also see a quick overview of here's everything that's due today. Then if they were to click over to the All tab, they can also see a list of everyone currently working through this program. And in this list, they get to see a sort of percentage progress bar of how much of the program has the candidate or resource completed, as well as how much of the program have the administrators completed. So if there are administrative tasks, you can monitor those here right from this list, as well as candidate progress through their tasks. Next, we'll look at a digital attachment view. So we talked earlier about how you can help digitize or minimize that paper trail by using these electronic attachments. So we can create tasks that include attachment uploads. Those could be like maybe our instruction type tasks that we talked about. Really, most types of tasks, you can enable these attachment uploads. But this is what it would look like from our resource or candidate view as they're clicking through their program. And then once they've uploaded a couple documents, we can see over here from the administrator view, that person could go in and dig into the resource or candidate's program and review their attachments that they've uploaded. They would be able to then download those attachments from within the system. Here is an example of the electronic signature. So you can enable this really on any transition task and require a signature. This will enforce that the candidate or resource signature matches the name on that person's profile. We can include acknowledgements as well. So this where it says, I have read the dress code here, that is acknowledgement text that we can customize right from within the system. Just as part of the transition management setup. It's not something that you need configuration console for. You have the ability to kind of edit this verbiage for each task even. Can be different for different tasks. But again, we can require an electronic signature here. Once the candidate signs it over in the administrator view, it'll show us that they've signed it and it'll give us the date that they signed it. And then will show us their response to the acknowledgement as well. All right, and the last piece on digitalization, I just want to talk briefly about our integration partners. Infor has a partnership with both W4 Symmetry and Mitratech Tracker i9. Both of these are products that are industry leaders in their respective spaces. Both very, very well-respected products. I've helped implement both of these a lot, and this is something I often see customers are very, very happy with. The W4 Symmetry is a W4 integration directly within Infor that lets employees electronically submit their federal and state W4. After they do so as part of their onboarding or pre-boarding, that will be available in employee space and visible to managers. And this is securely collected and stored, and then interfaced right to Infor, where the employee can then view it in employee space. And then Mitratech Tracker i9, another industry leader, basically allows for digital I-9 completion. They also deliver this I-9 approver portal that you get with Infor and transition management. So you're able to set that up as you set up transition management, and that allows you to review and approve I-9s that employees and candidates have submitted. And again, kind of top tier security on the tracker side. These are all securely collected and stored and sort of tightly integrated with Infor and with your HR Talent suite. So a quick review of some of the implementation examples that we've done. I just wanted to talk about this because I think it really helps highlight how flexible of a module this is, that we've seen and helped clients, everything from several K through 12 education school districts to healthcare organizations, to a power and utility company, to hospitality organizations. So people across all different sectors and industries get a lot of value out of this module. And I think it really helps highlight, I guess, how powerful and flexible this is and how you can sort of customize this to work for a lot of different employee groups. Many of these customers had very different employee groups even within their organization. And then obviously we can see that's quite a spread of different industries that have all been able to find very powerful use cases for transition management that we've helped implement. Today, I want to focus in a little bit specifically on some K through 12 education examples. This is a implementation that we've helped with recently with a large school district. They had about 75,000 students, 100 schools, 10,000 employees, 3,500 teachers, and 1,000 plus candidates per year. So as you can imagine, some of the challenges for them were just the massive volume of candidates, right? And the workload that fell on the hiring team and the administrative HR team as all of these people are starting, right? A vast majority of them are going to start at the end of the summer or the early fall. So we have hundreds and hundreds of people all starting work at the same time, all needing different forms, different signatures, all needing fingerprinting, many different employee groups who needed a huge variety of transition tasks. So that was a huge challenge for this school district and something they've struggled with for a long time. Something that was very paper-based and manual before, and we were able to use transition management to really help automate a lot of that and help kind of narrow down the specific groups of who needs to get which tasks and help digitalize a lot of the information that they're collecting ahead of hire. Some of the specific and I think kind of interesting applications that we saw with this client. So some of, I guess, more of the out-of-the-box solutions that we've seen going beyond just your normal, onboarding, pre-boarding, that type of thing. They had a need for, we'll call it sort of employment contracts light that needed to be signed before someone was an employee. So something that needed to be like reviewed, like terms of employment that needed to be reviewed and agreed upon before we click that hire action and before we create someone as an employee. So we were able to build custom forms within transition management that worked very well for them to be able to kind of sign these contracts or these agreements before employment. Another thing we saw them do that I thought was pretty cool and interesting was they have a yearly terms of employment that needs to go out to all employees annually, every single year, and be distributed to every employee and reviewed and submitted. And so we were able to create a short transition program that contained just this form that would then be distributed on an annual basis and be something that happens automatically. We are sending out this terms of employment in mass. It can be edited in one place by one administrator, and then each year it can be automatically sent out to every single employee. And that's all handled, all the tracking and distribution and email reminders and all of that is all handled automatically based on the transition management build. Another one that was kind of a powerful use of this that I mentioned a couple times throughout the presentation is fingerprinting. So they had a need to fingerprint every single employee before they start. And so we used a set of admin tasks to basically help their fingerprint administrators track that. So a task to track when someone has come in and been rolled for fingerprinting, and another task to track after we've heard back that fingerprint has cleared, as well as a set of fingerprinting instructions. So, who you need to contact, where you need to go, and by when for the employee themselves within the pre-board program. So we were able to use, both the resource-facing tasks and the administrative tasks together to create a little workflow for fingerprinting that worked out nicely for them and helped them track that process digitally. And then finally, they heavily utilized the eligibility groups that we talked about. So that idea that, again, a teacher needs different tasks than a principal, who needs different tasks than a after-school helper. And so we were able to build a set of eligibility groups and use those to link to the different transition tasks to really help them customize who is getting what tasks and who is completing what information. And so, yeah, they were able to use transition management in a couple ways that I thought were pretty interesting and pretty unique to them. And I think, hopefully it helps spark some ideas for you all on, hey, maybe we have this form that we send out every year, or, this thing that maybe is not regular cross-boarding or regular onboarding, but it's something that everyone needs to do on a somewhat regular basis. We can build transition programs and transition tasks to help with those kinds of things as well. It doesn't just have to be limited to your normal, onboarding, cross-boarding, offboarding process. All right, I'll do a very quick summary and then jump into a brief live demo here. So again, transition management is a module delivered within HR Talent, released back in version 11.0.1. This helps us streamline pre-boarding, onboarding, cross-boarding, and offboarding for all variety of audiences. It is fully integrated into the Infor HR Talent module, delivered with Infor HR Talent, and integrates with employee space and manager space. And really the core of it is that it helps simplify and automate and digitalize all the changes and growth within your team. All right, and we'll jump into the live demo. I'll spend just about 5 minutes here giving us a quick look into the system, and then we'll save just a brief time at the end if anyone has questions. So the first thing that I want to show as part of our demo is the dashboard from an administrator perspective here. So if you remember, we looked at a screenshot of this, but from here as an administrator, I basically get insight to all the different transition programs within my organization. I can click on a specific program and I can see what is pending, what is in progress. It gives me a nice little overdue flag for all these people who have very overdue programs. It also tells me anything that's due today. I can also search up here. And we'll search for our pre-boarding activities. And we can see our other view that we saw a screenshot of, our nice kind of list of all the open programs. So if we had other open pre-boarding programs, we would see those here in a list too. And this gives us a nice overview of the status of this program and the percentage of completion of the candidate tasks as well as the administrative tasks. I can double click into this program, and this is something that administrators, recruiters, managers would have access to, but I can double click into this program to see an overview of what's been completed, as well as digging into the tasks that this person is working through. So I can see which tasks they've completed, which they've started, what they have not completed yet. I can dig into a specific task and see more detail about it from the administrator view. If we had something like a attachment task, let's go look for our onboarding. If we had something like an attachment task, I would be able to dig into that and download or view any attachments that the employee had uploaded. And the other thing that I think is kind of nice is, although we create these programs to be kind of assigned automatically and should contain the tasks based on eligibility groups and such that this person would need, if as an administrator we ever need to give someone a sort of one-off task, we can come in here and create a new task for them and add that to their ongoing program. We also have the power to update or cancel existing tasks that are in progress. And again, really just dig in and see any additional detail that we want to about the ongoing onboarding or pre-boarding for this person. Really quick, I will jump away from the administrator view and we'll take a look at the candidate or resource view. So this is as if we were in the employee space, just as an employee who's been recently assigned onboarding. If we come into our employee profile and then go to the work section, we will see a box with my programs down here. And this will show us, again, kind of an overview here of how many tasks we have remaining, what our percentage of completion is, when this is due. I can go ahead and pick up from where I left off on this program. And this is sort of the format that we will see as an employee within transition management. So this is an example of a content type task that we talked about earlier, where this welcome content is something that was defined within the transition management setup, and then now I'm seeing it rendered to me as an employee. I can also go onward to the personal information form. So this is that form type task that we talked about, where I can update personal information like maybe my marital status or birth date. I have to go ahead and review and acknowledge this before I submit it. But that's an example of a form type task. Or here we could see another content type task where we've got a confidentiality agreement that we want me to review. And then it wants me to go ahead and sign that before I submit it and continue onward. And so this is what these programs would look like from an employee's point of view, kind of a set of tasks that they're able to navigate through from their end, forms and information that they're reviewing and filling out. All right, I know we are close to time, so I will go ahead and stop there. Here is some contact information both for me and for Intellias in general. If you have any questions about this webinar, about transition management, talent acquisition, or about Infor or Lawson in general, feel free to reach out to me or reach out to us. But also if there are any questions now in the next couple minutes, I would be happy to answer those as well.
And we do have a couple, and for anybody that needs to drop, we are recording this. So if you need to follow up on the question and answer portion, you can certainly do that. So quickly, we have got, you mentioned onboarding begins after the hire action. We initiate the hire action before the actual start date so we can get an employee ID. Can the candidate still perform pre-boarding tasks if the hire action has already been completed?
That's a very good question. They cannot. Once the hire action is completed, the pre-boarding program will be done and they'll kind of be no longer using that external candidate profile. But that is actually something that we see commonly, that I guess what you're doing today, that our definition of onboarding and pre-boarding and where the hire happens might be a little different. And that's something that we've definitely worked with clients in the past to kind of help us figure out what workarounds can we do, or what can we put in pre-board, or what can we put in onboard to kind of make this work for your organization. So it's something that you can definitely kind of play around with what goes into what program and what happens when. But once you take that hire action and create an employee ID, pre-boarding is done and they'll be moving on to onboarding.
Right. We have several third-party forms that need to be filled out by candidates as pre-boarding. I've been told that GHR doesn't have the capability to show a third-party PDF and place fillable fields on top. The two solutions I've been given are to use a link to direct the candidate outside the system to fill out the PDF, or to create a custom form, but I'm not sure our vendors would accept this. What would you recommend? And are there other workarounds that I'm not thinking of?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think both of those two solutions are worth considering. That is true. So Infor just released that PDF feature the ability to create a PDF task relatively recently, and you are correct that it does not allow for fillable fields in the application as of now. My hope is that that's something that will be coming at some point. But my recommendation, honestly, would probably be to create a PDF type task, upload that PDF as just sort of a static document, and then include it as well as a download on that task, and just have the person download it, fill out the fillable fields locally on their computer, and then upload it as an attachment to the task to then store it within Infor. So they would kind of get like a nice PDF view of it within the Infor task and maybe some instructions at the top, as well as a link to go ahead and download the fillable PDF form, fill it out locally, and then upload it, back to the task and store it as a attachment. Off the top of my head, I think that is probably the cleanest thing. But you're right that I think, a custom form could also be a nice solution. That's obviously a little bit more complicated, has a little bit more overhead. And I think your point about, having to work with the vendors to make sure that would work is also a good one. I think that's something that could work nicely, but would require a little bit more effort and overhead.
All right, and we've got just one more right now. Would you please explain I-9 approver portal? Does Mitratech offer the service of viewing ID documents and completing Section 2 of the I-9?
Yeah, another really good question. Short answer is yes. They basically, and that's another thing actually. If people are interested, I was thinking about another webinar, maybe this spring or summer, kind of digging specifically into I-9 and W-4. But the short answer is yes. That has a nice little kind of wizard that it walks the candidate through, that has them complete Section 2, has them upload their various type of ID documents, and it kind of walks them through what combinations of IDs you can use, has them upload that, and it's got built-in verification to make sure they're uploading a valid sort of combination. And then it stores those all in the I-9 portal. And then the approver portal is where we set up like administrators who can then go see and review and approve those documents.
All right, that is all I'm seeing for questions at this time. Again, like Will mentioned, you can reach out to him at any of the contact areas he's got on the screen here, or you will also be receiving this recording in the next day or so. So you can follow up with that email as well. So thank you all for joining today. Hope you have a great afternoon.
Thanks very much, everyone.